Cowboys and Elves 3 by T. Martino. Terry woke up and got up stiffly. Her age and sleeping on the ground was beginning to take their toll on her. Tor and Finn were where they had been last night and were watching her carefully. Finn wondered at her stiffness and again thought of what it meant to be mortal. However, Terry was cheerful. Joe the cowdog crept out of the bedroll and sneezed once and shook himself. Terry looked around her, faced the sun, and said something in a different language. Finn listened carefully. It wasn't the same language. Terry was facing east towards the rising sun. She sat down, rebraided her graying hair in 2 braids, pulled on her boots, then buckled on her gun belt. It was chilly, so she pulled on her coat, fumbled about in her pommel bag. There was a creek close, and Terry walked down to it to wash her face. Then she walked back and saddled Roni. The 2 Eldar walked up to her. "Well, boys, it's been interesting, but I gotta go find my trail, and I guess you gotta go find your theater group or what have you." She swung up on Roni and gave them a little wave. Tor and Finn exchanged glances with each other. Finn told Tor, "We cannot simply let her ride off. I do not believe she understands the dangers here." Tor nodded, "But we also cannot take her captive. She would lose her trust in us, and it would confuse and alarm her." So they went back and got their gear, and followed her as she rode off. Terry turned and laughed at them. Boys, what are you doing? I don't need your help. Go on, do it, whatever it is you do." Terry made a shooing gesture at them. Tor laughed. Finn smiled at her. They moved back a bit, but as she went on, they still followed her. Terry stopped again. "Look, boys, go mind your own knitting. I got to figure out what happened to my trail." The Eldar simply looked at her in a friendly way. She shooed them again with no effect. And so that morning consisted of Terry trying to convince them to go away and leave her alone, and Tor and Finn following her with quiet amusement at her consternation. Then Finn decided to try and teach her a few words of Sindarine. He caught up to her, and she turned and shooed him. He smiled, but ignored this. "Fana," said Finn, and pointed at the clouds. Terry wrinkled her face at him. "Go home," she told him, and pointed behind her. Finn shook his head and again said, "Fana." He pointed at the clouds overhead. Terry frowned at him. "Your Fana is that way." Again she pointed back the way they had come. Finn laughed softly. "Fana?" he asked hopefully. Terry gave an exasperated sigh. "Clouds, damn it." Tor caught up. Finn said to Tor while pointing at the clouds, "Clouds, damn it." Tor shook his head. "Damn it is a curse, I'm fairly certain." Terry rolled her eyes. She muttered, "Dear God in heaven, give me patience." Then loudly, "Clouds." At that moment, from behind the brush, stepped 5. Terry didn't know what they were. She stared at them in amazement. She'd never seen anything like them. Tall and brawny, like a cross between a wild boar and a very hideous man. They all were carrying axes and swords. 5 more appeared right behind them. Terry saw Finn and Tor draw their swords. Terry for a moment looked for a camera crew. The orcs charged. Terry pulled the .44, dropped her reins, and told the big brute before her, "Look, buddy, fall back or I'm going to let in some daylight." She had a moment to think, "I've always wanted to say that." The orc smiled wickedly and licked his lips. "Damn it," Terry stated. She held the pistol with both hands and fired. The sound of a .44 is deafening, and the group of orcs jumped at the shot. Finn and Tor, who had dispatched 2 of their foes, turned to see the 3rd stop from a bullet from Terry's pistol. Terry wheeled Roni and charged. She fired as she came, missed, fired again, winged one, fired again, missed, fired again, and he dropped. Finn was then fighting the biggest of them, and they were close, hand to hand. Terry unfastened her riata, wheeled Roni and charged, twirling the rope over her head. Then she threw. The riata was long and made from 12 strands of bullhide. It settled around the orc's neck, and Terry dallied and wheeled Roni around and galloped off. The orc was yanked off his feet. He surprisingly got back to his feet running and was fast enough to be gaining on the quarter horse. He grasped the rope with both hands, stopped, and gave a mighty pull. Roni came to a halt, half reared at the pressure. The riata broke with a twang. "Oh, heck." Terry yelled and wheeled in front of him, dragging at the bear spray. She got it out and sprayed him full in the face as he slashed at her with the sword. He gasped and screamed. He was cut down by the sword blows of Finn and Tor, and the fight was over. Terry dismounted from Roni and looked in astonishment at the dead orcs. "What the heck are these things?" she said to Tor and Finn. She then picked up a convenient stick and gingerly poked at the dead orc. Finn gently pulled the old woman back. She looked up at him and said, "Man, they really smell. Phew, smells like the insides of a dead bat." Tor could guess what she was saying. "Orcs? Actually, I'm a bit surprised at your initial reaction to them." Tor then grinned at her, then at Finn. "Man, you hacked the heck out of 'em. How can this be a movie set? Aw, dang, my riata." Terry stared down at the broken coils at her feet. Terry then looked down at a throbbing in her arm. "Heck," Terry stated. "I've got stabbed." Her left arm had a deep 6-inch sword gash through her coat and shirt and was bleeding profusely. Tor sheathed his sword and took Terry's elbow and wrist and looked at the jagged laceration. Finn knelt down and brought out some cloths and small packets from his satchel. Terry then tried to pull her wounded arm back from Tor. "Look, do you mind? I have my own emergency supplies." But Tor held onto her arm and whispered to the old woman in Quenya to quiet her. They both encouraged her to sit on the ground while they took off her coat and rolled the shredded shirt sleeve back. They inspected the wound. Finn stated, "The Atani can easily die from a cut, and the blade may have been poisoned." Finn wiped the blood with a clean cloth as Terry winced and pulled at Tor's gasp. "Dang, boys, that hurts. Damn it," Terry told them. Tor repeated to her softly, "Damn it." "There appears to be nothing in the wound," Finn stated. Terry began to feel a bit faint, and as she stared around her, it seemed to get darker. Joe the cowdog crowded her boots and whined. Finn and Tor could feel this change in her, and Finn began to sing in Quenya. Terry passed out into dark dreams where, standing in a meadow, over and over she fired the big 44 into the faces of attacking orcs. In this dream was a horseman. He rode a big gray horse. He shone with exquisite light. In his hands was a great bow. In the dream he circled Terry and shot arrows at her attackers. When they were all dispatched, he rode up to her and smiled, swung off his horse, picked her up, and placed her on Roni. Then he pointed to the sunrise. Terry awoke to the sounds of a stream. She lay on top of her bedroll, covered in Tor and Finn's cloaks. Roni grazed near her, and Joe the cowdog was stretched out by her side. Finn felt considerable relief seeing her open her eyes. He knelt beside her. "You are a brave spirit, Verrier. We shall call you that. Verrier, boldness." Tor leaned over her and laughed at her surprised expression. "Not to stand before Mandos this day. The great judge will have an interesting time when you appear before him, Verrier." "Mandos." Terry sat up and added, "What the heck just happened?" Tor laughed. Finn encouraged her to lay back. Her arm was neatly bandaged and only stung a bit. "Orcs," said Tor. "You remember? Orcs?" Terry then stated, "Orcs."